Hello and welcome back to the Early Language Strategies for Parents and Guardians. In part one, we talked about communication development and communication styles, and now we're going to have a look at some different strategies that you can use to target each of those areas of communication that we've talked about already. So these are very general strategies, thinking back to the communication pyramid, and we're going to start with some adult and child interaction, thinking about your play and everyday routines. So play is fun, and this is the best way for children to learn and to develop different skills. So play involves lots of repetition, which is really helpful for children to learn things, whether it's doing the same actions over again, or for us hearing the same words over and over. Keeping play simple is really helpful. Your child will still enjoy activities that you played when they were younger. We want you to join in with your child's play, and don't worry about having to play things the proper way. So if they're not playing with something in the normal way that you might expect, that's absolutely fine. It's still fun, it's still play, and it's still an opportunity for you to use these strategies to support their communication skills. Want you to let your child choose the toy and game as much as possible. So we're going to follow the child's lead so they're more interested in the activity. So you can watch, wait and listen to see what your child is interested in. They might look at it, they might reach your point, they might bring an item to you. Anything that they're interested in is going to hold their attention for longer. So it's going to give us more opportunity to use these strategies, and we're going to be able to extend those interactions and develop their attention skills. Join in with your child's play. So you can try copying their actions and sounds, whatever they're doing, you can do it after them and see if they respond to it. You can also play with the same items with them. So if you're with cars, your child might be doing something with their car. You can have a car alongside them and copy what they're doing with the actions and see what your child does in response to that. People play is a really nice way. So we have people play where we don't need any equipment. So games like peekaboo, tickle, chase, bouncing on your lap. There's also people play where the toys need somebody else to come and help the child. So they might not be able to do it on their own, and they're going to need a grown-up to help them with their bubbles or their wind-up toys. Books are another good way. It's a good opportunity, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Songs and rhymes are really good for communication development. And as we've just said, that you're going to get some repetition, they're going to be hearing words lots of times, and there might be particular songs or rhymes that your child finds more motivating. So that's going to keep their attention for longer. As well as play, we want you to think about your normal routine. So things you do on a regular basis. It could be daily things like getting washed and dressed, your meal times, bath time and bedtime. And then think about other regular activities that you do. So it could be walking to the shops or going to school or nursery. Anything that you do on a regular basis is another opportunity where you can incorporate these strategies. All play and routines are a great chance to start interacting and to practice words together. So we'll start thinking from the bottom up. We've done play already, and now we have attention and listening strategies. So we need to gain children's attention, remembering that they might be single channeled or they might have a limited attention span. So the best way to get a child's attention is to get down to their level, get into their eye line and say their name. You can also use physical prompts as well, so gently tapping them on their arm to get their attention. This means you've got their attention, so they're going to be able to follow what you say or do next. Ways of supporting attention and listening development can include games such as peekaboo. So that encourages some waiting for that little reward where you appear again. Turn taking things such as rolling a car or a ball to each other, because we've got to wait for the other person's turn before we can have our turn again, or anything that happens in a turn taking manner. So for example, bubbles, your child's got to look at you, they have to wait and they have to listen. And then once you've done that, you can go through the same process again. These activities are going to be fun as well. So if your child finds the activity fun and they can do it and they can join in, for example, popping bubbles, they're much more likely to do this activity for longer. So we're going to be able to help them extend their attention span. To build up a child's attention each time they play, try and encourage them to have one more go or one more turn in the activity before you end it or move on to something else. So as you feel you're starting to lose the child's attention, just try and encourage them to do one more before you finish that. Remember that with young children, 5 minutes is the maximum amount of time we would expect them to focus for. So the next stage is receptive language, which is our understanding. So don't forget to get your child's attention before giving them an instruction. Then we want to think about the words we're using. So keep your instructions short and try and think about the key words you need. Keep your language simple. So are you using vocabulary that's appropriate to where the child is in terms of their development and what they're able to understand? This next point is really important. So we need to give children enough time to think about what we've said to them. One of the biggest recommendations we make is to wait up to 10 seconds for your child to respond, which can be quite a long time to wait and feels quite unnatural. I'm going to pause for about 10 seconds now, just so you can experience how that feels. So that's quite a long amount of time, and it can feel quite uncomfortable. As human beings, we naturally try to fill the gap and we will jump in and say something or ask another question. But that's a good amount of time for a child to be able to process the words that you said and hopefully respond as well. Offer repetitions, and we always recommend that you use exactly the same words. So when you've said it, you've waited, and they've not responded, say it again in exactly the same words. If you rephrase it or use a new sentence, your child is going to have to start processing that again from the beginning. So it's going to be trickier for them to understand. You want to think about what your child is hearing and how they're going to interpret that as well. So thinking about the keywords and the way you deliver them is really important as well. If you said to a child, we can have an ice cream after we've been to the shops, they might only pick up on certain words, so they might just hear ice cream. They might not be very happy when you turn up to the shop and there's no ice cream because they've not fully understood all of the words in that sentence. Also thinking about the order that you say in those words in. So if you say ice cream before shop, they might expect things to happen in that order. So keeping it short, using simple language, trying to use comments, we could say something like shops first and ice cream next. Or you might just say shops first, and when you've completed that activity, then we can say ice cream. That's a lot clearer for your child, and hopefully it's going to reduce some of the frustration and miscommunications that can happen sometimes. So the next stage is expressive language. This is our spoken language, the vocabulary, the words we use, and how we put them into phrases and sentences. You can model language to your child throughout play and during all of those everyday activities. So bath time, snack time, getting dressed are really good opportunities to introduce words and to say them lots of times. Make sure that you're using those keywords and that you're using them regularly in games, activities and routines. So you can repeat the same words and you can introduce other words as well, but you're going to say certain words very frequently. Having fun with words and sounds is really helpful, and it's going to help children to be more motivated to communicate. So singing songs, using rhymes, making sounds in play, so animal sounds and vehicle sounds, being silly, blowing raspberries, that's going to make it really interesting for your child, and hopefully you're going to get a bit more motivation for them to copy you and start to use sounds and words themselves more often. You can have a look through picture books together and label the things you see. We'll talk a little bit more about that further along. You can keep your language simple. Think about where your child is right now, and we want you to try and keep what you do about one step above them. So if your child's not using any words yet, you can model single words to them. And if your child's using single words, then we can model 2-word links to them. So for example, here, we've got this repeat back and expand. So if your child says dog, you can say dog eating. If your child says dog eating, we could say big dog eating. So we're always adding on one more word, modeling a slightly longer phrase and just keeping our language slightly ahead of where your child is at, but not too many steps ahead. Repeating back is really helpful. So you can repeat back the word your child has said, you can add on another word. This is going to help your child see what they can do next, how they can add to things, but it's also going to give them good models. So as we said, your child needs to practice saying words lots of times before they get all the sounds right in those words. We don't want you to put any pressure on your child to repeat the word back again, so just say it back to them with the right model. So if your child says tat instead of cat, you can just say cat back with no pressure for them to say the word again. We just want to make sure that they're hearing that correct version. Think about the types of words you were using. So children tend to acquire naming words first, so things like people, objects, toys, food items. Then we have action words, so these are your verbs, so things like play, eat, sleep, cooking, jumping, and so on. Adjectives, so this is things like colours, they do come much later developmentally. So we can use those words, but we just need to be mindful that we're thinking about where your child is at, what types of words they're using already, and what types of words we want to help them introduce into their communication. So commenting can be used in most activities. As you're going about your daily routines and during your play, you can comment on what is happening. So, oh, listen, the phone's ringing. I wonder who it is. Maybe it's Grandad. So we're hearing words all the time, lots of nice examples there. During play, we can talk about what's happening, what can we see? So, oh, car gone, or all fall down. Adding simple language all day long. We want you to incorporate that into your natural day and using lots and lots of repetition. So nice example here, you can use the word juice, but you can use it in more than one way and introduce different words alongside that. So we've got juice gone or more juice. When you're helping your child learn language, it's important to use lots of different types of words. So your child might find it more fun to use certain types of words. So things like actions or very physically active games, things like up and down, stop and go, more and again can be really, really motivating for your child. And you can use those words in lots of different types of activities and play. We've also got those action words like jump and run. Of course, we've got the names of objects, food, clothes, toys, and so on. So let's have a think about some examples. Here we have a car, and there are some different types of words that we can use when talking about it. So we have naming words, which is going to include car, but we can think about the different parts. So there's a door, there are wheels, it has lights. Greetings are good, and we can normally use this alongside lots of different things, particularly in the early stages. We can use words like hello or bye-bye to introduce or end activities as well. So hello car when it's just appeared, or bye-bye car when we're tidying up. There are describing words. So this can include things like colours, but as we've said, these words sometimes come a little bit later. You want to think about what words your child has got already. So if your child's not using the word car yet, then teaching them what colour the car is probably not the most useful word for them to learn right now. Once they're starting to use car, then we can add on these extra describing words. So it could be a red car, it could be big, it could be shiny, it might be dirty. Is it fast or is it slow? And then we have action words. So these can be actions that the car does. So is the car driving or crash? Or what about what the people do? So are we pushing the car? Words like go and stop are really good for this as well. And then the last section is location words. So as you can see, we've got gone when it's not there, but we can talk about the physical location. Is it up or down? Is it in or on? Is it under? Is it in the fridge? Is it in your bag? So lots of different words that you can use in relation to each of these. So we have another example here. We've got an apple. I want you to have a think about each of these sections and see if you can think of one or two words to go along with each of these. So pause the video and have a quick think and press play when you're ready to go again. So commenting, for an apple, we have the word apple, but we can also think about the parts. So we can see a leaf there, it has a stalk, it has pips as well. So there are different parts of it. It's got skin. Greetings, just like we had with the car, we can use hello or hi or bye-bye. Describing words, so is it my apple or is it mommy's apple? Is it a red apple? Is it dirty? Is it juicy? Is it yummy? Lots of different words we can use to describe. Think about the actions. So what actions the apple can do? It could roll or it might fall. And then what actions the people can do as well. So this could be pick up the apple, or you might wash the apple, you might chop the apple or bite the apple. Finally, we've got location words. So again, those words like in, on, under, up, down, or the physical place where it is, whether it's in your bag, it's on the table, and so on. Okay, so it's really important that we notice how children are communicating, we interpret those, and we sort of reward the children with a response as well. So your child will try to communicate with you. They might have some words, but they might just be using grunts or sounds or a gesture or something like that. So it's pretty typical for children to go through a babbling phase where they sort of chatter and use jargon. So it sounds a little bit like words, but they're not using proper words. This is all part of experimenting with sounds and voices, and it's part of keeping things fun and exploring in order to develop those communication skills. So when your child is communicating with sounds or non-verbal communication, have a look at what they're trying to tell you. Listen really hard, try and interpret it and repeat what they've said, or give them the word that they would want to say in that situation. So a child would say, with the hands up in the air. You can interpret this as up, or another word that you would use in your family or in the education setting. You might say cuddle or pick up instead. Repeat that word back clearly, and you can add a gesture or a sign as well. So you might point up or mime the action that the child is trying to say. It's important to think about what the child wants to say in that situation. So for example, if a child needs help with something and they're sort of indicating that to you, either bringing an item to you or they're making some sounds, then say the words as your child needs to say it. So you can model help, or help please, or mommy help, or help shoes, rather than saying, do you want mommy to help you? Which is lots of words and it's a question, and it doesn't help the child figure out what they need to say in that situation. So always remembering what they would want to say and trying to show them what to do in that situation. So we use questions for lots of different purposes. So we might be trying to keep an interaction going. If you ask a question, it encourages the other person to take their turn. We naturally ask lots of questions, and adults tend to ask lots of questions when they're communicating with children. Sometimes we use questions to understand what the other person means. So when you're trying to figure out and interpret that, or you're checking for clarification that you've understood something properly, it also helps your child understand when it's their turn to talk. Some questions aren't as helpful. So if you ask a yes or no question, you can respond with yes or no, and the conversation's effectively stopped there. We can ask too many questions, which can be a bit overwhelming or lead to the child feeling tested. Or we might ask a question but not give enough time for the child to answer, thinking of that 10-second pause. Questions can be too hard. So what did we do yesterday? That's a really tricky question. It's quite abstract, and it's nothing to do with what you can see in the here and now. So it's much harder for a child to understand that type of question. Some questions are going to be tricky because it gives a child too much choice. If your child doesn't have many words or very much language, then asking what do you want to eat offers too much choice for them. It makes it a bit tricky. And the way we can deal with that is by giving choices. So start with choosing between two things. Do you want juice or milk? And we can keep that really simple. You can simply say ball or car. You can use the actual object. So as you show each object, you say the word of it to them as well. If your child finds this a bit tricky to make a choice, start with a really easy choice. So choose one item that they find really motivating and something that they don't like. So you know what they're going to choose, but you're modeling that language and giving them an opportunity to make a choice and communicate to you. So you might offer chocolate or broccoli, and your child will choose the chocolate, but you're going through the process, modeling that language, and they're getting a chance to communicate as well. There are some questions that are helpful and are more suited to children at the earlier developmental stages. So those questions beginning with WH, some of them are quite nice, easy ones. So what's that? Where is a nice one, and who are some nice, easy questions. But looking back at that, what did we do yesterday, or something like why, they are very tricky, and we wouldn't expect a child to be able to understand all of those questions at a young age. So when you ask a question, wait for a response. Leave plenty of time for your child to answer. Thinking about 10 seconds or as long as you can pause while still having your child's attention. Try not to ask things like, what's that, too often. We're not going to eliminate all questions, but we just want to balance between things like comments and questions. If we ask what's that lots and lots, it feels like the child is being tested. We can model the language, so giving choices. So you're asking a question, but you're giving the child the words that they need to respond. If your child doesn't respond or take a turn, then we can wait again. If they still don't take a turn and respond or say anything, then you can model what they could say and then carry on the conversation. So you're showing them what to do in that moment. The best questions you can use are going to be about what the child is doing. What can they see? What are they experiencing right now? That's going to make the most sense to them. We want to use simple language that's at the right level for your child. So thinking about how tricky the vocabulary you're using is and how many words you're using as well. And then we follow that with enough space for your child to process and respond as well. Alongside all of our language, we can use gestures and signing as part of our everyday communication. And most people use that as a part of their normal communication instead of using words and alongside using words as well. Your child might find it easier to communicate with a sign rather than words at first, and this is absolutely fine as long as you acknowledge the sign with a word. So use gesture alongside the spoken language. So there's some quite natural gestures for things like drink. You're going to tip as if you're drinking from a cup, and that's fine. Just say the word alongside it as well. So as speech and language therapists, we often use Makaton signing with some of our children, and we use it to support our words and help children understand. So some of those trickier concepts like position words, we can use physical signs to show whether something's in or whether something's on. We do offer a Makaton demonstration session. And if you are interested in doing this, then you can contact our department and ask to book onto one of the sessions. Makaton has been shown to improve children's language skills. It doesn't stop children from talking because we're always saying the words at the same time of the sign, but it gives your child more opportunity to understand and to communicate themselves. So they might be able to copy the sign before they can copy the word or the sound. And using these signs to communicate their needs is hopefully going to reduce your child's frustration.